Hello and welcome to Ellroy Reads. I am your host, Stephen Powell, and at the end of today's episode, I will sing. Okay, so now you have to wait till the end of the episode. If you're unfamiliar with Ellroy Reads, this is a show where every week I look at a book that was influential to James Ellroy's writing career, writing that thrilled him, moved him, inspired him. And for this episode, we're doing something slightly different because we're looking at poetry. Poetry that and poets that James Ellroy admires. And if you want a good taste of the poetry that Ellroy admires, you only need to read the epigraphs of some of his books. So here we have The Black Dahlia, and there's a quote from Anne Sexton's All My Pretty Ones. Now I fold you down, my drunkard, my navigator, my first lost keeper, to love and look at later. It's a very moving line, and if you read the entire poem by Sexton, it is about a woman looking through old family photographs of her deceased father. And the family connection, makes it a really touching choice for Ellroy because Ellroy had been obsessed ever since he was a child by the Black Dahlia murder case and the murder victim Elizabeth Short. And being the son of a murdered woman, although the two murders had nothing in common, there was no direct connection. It's very much a book about family, or a book about lost families, i.e., orphans, and that tremendous sense of trauma when there's like either a death in the family or when the family unit is broken apart. It's a very, very moving and touching poem, and many times I've heard Ellroy perform poetry, and you can hear it yourself if you happen to go to his next book reading, or there's plenty of examples on YouTube. And I often find he performs poetry better than some poets themselves. Now, with regards to Anne Sexton, I haven't heard him perform Anne Sexton's poetry. I've heard two audio recordings of Anne Sexton's poetry. One is absolutely brilliant because she's really at the top of her game. The second I had to switch off because, not through any kind of negative performance on her part, it was just that the recording was made only a few days prior to her suicide. And it felt intrusive to listen to it, and because she was clearly unwell. But when you go to an Ellroy reading, one of the ways he often ends his show is he will have someone in the audience and say, does anybody want to ask me, why do I write? So there might be a plant who says, hey James, why do I write? And then he quotes Dylan Thomas, and I'm going to quote it for you now. In my craft of sullen art, exercised in the still night, when only the moon rages and the lovers lie abed, with their griefs in their arms, I labour by singing light, not for ambition or bread, or the trade or strut of charms on the ivory stages, but for the common wages of their most secret heart. Not for the proud man apart from the raging moon do I write on these spindrift pages, nor for the towering dead with their nightingales and charms, but for the lovers, their arms around the griefs of the ages, who pay no praise or wages, nor heed my craft or art. I was always floored by the way Ellroy read that. He memorized the poem, and I decided I was going to memorize the poem as well. And I use that as a party trick. I occasionally bring it out at dinner parties, which I'm sure people just love. I actually, after hearing Ellroy read it, I went on YouTube and found a recording of Dylan Thomas reading it, and Thomas's reading just felt all wrong to me, which is I know is completely sacrilegious thing to say, and apologies for any Dylan Thomas fans out there, but like Thomas read it very, very slowly, extremely slowly, which obviously, I mean, he's the author of it. That's how he had it in mind. But because Ellroy had always read it with a real cracking pace, I always felt that there was a kind of passion to that pace in Ellroy's reading of it, and I've my reading there is about the same pace that Ellroy read it because I just learned from him. It was the same because I've heard Ellroy quote from the Four Quartets, and afterwards, I've heard Edward Fox read the Four Quartets, and I've came across a recording of Alec Guinness read the four quartets. Now, those are two of my favorite actors of all time. And, you know, they're experts on T.S. Eliot. Alec Guinness knew him and starred in his plays Ross and The Cocktail Party. And you know what? I thought both of their readings were completely wrong because I'd heard Ellroy read it first. And again, he reads it at a cracking pace. And Guinness and Fox were very, very slow. So I don't know what this thing is with performers. Obviously, they're very, very confident. They take their time. That they won't be rushed, which is very, very important. But to me, Ellroy's pace when he's delivering poetry is something to behold, and to me has a lot of passion in it. Here is Bloods Are Over. This is an ARC that was a gift from Ellroy himself. That's why the kind of strange cover you see. ARCs often come like this. They're cheaply made, but it was a gift much loved. And the epigraph at the beginning of Bloods Are Over is from A.E. Houseman. Clay lies still, but bloods are over. Breaths aware that will not keep. Up, lad, when the journey's over, there'll be time enough to sleep. And, that kind of sums up Ellroy in that particular novel perfectly. He's like, this was his concluding novel of the Underworld USA trilogy, so he's just like, my characters rove, they shed blood, they're political operators. And the up lad, who does that remind you of? Who's always saying lad? Who's calling everyone a lad in Ellroy's fiction? It's Dudley Smith, his greatest character. Ellroy actually wasn't the first one who thought of Bloods Are Over as a title. That was Holland Ellison, who Ellroy knew in the 80s. So maybe Ellroy took it directly from him. I think they were, I suppose you call them frenemies. The two quite egotistical writers who crossed paths in the 80s. But Ellroy told me it became clear that Holland Ellison was never ever going to write this book called Bloods Are Over. He kept talking about. So Ellroy took it, and wrote, I think, maybe one of his late career masterpieces, Bloods Are Over, and it's a fantastic title. And then, funnily enough, in 2018, which is the year Holland Ellison died, an anthology of his fiction called Bloods Are Over did come out. Ellroy has written some poetry himself, and if you look at some of his recordings online, you'll see him sometimes like talking in jive speak, which can be very, very amusing, but more straight poetry right from the beginning. Brown's Requiem, his first novel, and there's a scene towards the end where our hero Fritz Brown, it's the night before his big confrontation with the antagonist Cathcart, and it's a life or death situation, and he's holed up somewhere, and he's thinking about this, and he's thinking, I could die tomorrow, or I could kill tomorrow. It's that sort of thing. And then a poem comes to him, he says, in a moment of epiphany, not in a moment of creation and toil. A poem comes to him, and we'll read it to you. There's an electric calm at the heart of the storm, transcendentally alive and safe and warm. So get out now and search the muse. The blight is real. You have to choose. The choice is yours. Your mind demurs. It's yours, it's his, it's ours, it's hers. Moral stands will save us yet. The alternative is certain death. And when Ellroy submitted the manuscript to that to Avon, his first publisher and his first editor, Nellie Saber, and some great stuff about Ellroy's relationship with Nellie Sabin in my biography of Ellroy, Love Me First in Danger. And Nellie Sabin was like, I don't want to include it, we'll have to run a copyright check on it. It costs money, it costs time. I was like, no, I wrote it. And she was amazed. It's a good poem. I mean, maybe poetry isn't his immediate calling. Obviously, a lot of David Mamet's written poetry, but he's a playwright. Ellroy is very much a novelist to his core from the beginning. His novels are better than his short stories. Short stories are great, but really he's a novelist. That's what he was born to write. But he's got a poet's ear, and he's really, really good. And okay, well, now we're getting to the bit. Keeping on the subject of Ellroy as a performer, many of the people who watch and subscribe to this show will have seen Ellroy perform. Rather few of you will have seen Ellroy sing. You have to go back to the 90s to have seen this. Ellroy actually had a backing band. In fact, he had two. If he was touring in the US, he had a backing band called Pink Floyd the Barber. They changed their name to the Double Nought Spy Car because they had legal trouble from the real Pink Floyd. But they would be his backing band. And then when he toured Australia, it was his one and only trip there, his backing band was Mark Snarsky and Mark Snarsky's band. Now, I've spoken to all of these musicians in Australia and the US who performed with Ellroy, and they all loved him, and they're all absolutely great guys, truly wonderful. And Mark Snarsky is who I've become a huge fan of. He seems like he's just this great Aussie personality. He's living in Spain now. He seems like he's semi-retired and just enjoying life. He has the most beautiful, lush voice. My voice isn't quite that good, or is nowhere near that good, but Ellroy would sing. And Ellroy's song was a rewritten version of a song by Steve Allen called This Could Be the Start of Something, or This Could Be the Start of Something Big, which Steve Allen was an American TV personality. He wrote hundreds of songs. It was his only hit. And it's been covered no end of times because you can change the lyrics to something that would suit you. So the lyrics are quite cute to it. It's like, you're filling out your income tax and buying a toothbrush, and you know this could be the start of something big. So Ellroy rewrote this. Now, his version in the 90s was profane, and we went through it together. He'd forgotten it because it kind of ceased being part of his act, after the Australian tour, late 90s. And he had to strain himself to recall the lyrics. We recalled most of them. And I'm going to try and attempt to sing it for you now. And now singing is not my forte, so you're going to have to forgive me in advance. Also, I should say, this is Ellroy's song. This is very, very profane lyrics. So if you're easily offended, no one think any less of you. Just switch off now. It's absolutely fine. Okay, so I've got the backing music. I'm going to try and sing for you. You're beating up Rodney King and starting a riot. You're doing a drive-by hit and smoking some crack. You're crawling up someone's thighs and telling them showbiz lies. And they know you're just a sleaze and hack. You're getting a bad head job and porking a drag queen. And the religious right is giving you shit. But then you hear angels sing because LA's the place to swing. And you don't mind this grief a bit. So go get your dick lengthened and have some breast implants. Only the large survive in the shimmering land. For LA is watching you, it x-rays you through and through. And you can't get by with tiny glands. Okay, thank you very much. See you next time. Rock and roll.